Merhaba. Verinin Yeni Anlatımları serisine hoş geldiniz. Salt'ın Digilogue'la birlikte sürdürdüğü bir proje. Bugünkü sunumumuz İngilizce olacak. Birazdan böyle tanıtıma geçeceğiz. Ancak sorularınızı izlerken Türkçe YouTube'un chat bölümüne yazabilirsiniz. Bunu belirtmek istedim önce. So hello all and welcome. This is Meriç from Salt. I'm here today with Gene Kogan and Lalin Akalan. This is the second public meeting of the series New Approaches to Data, in which SALT partners with Digilogue since 2019. It's actually a particular data set that brought us together in this project, and that's the Istanbul Ansiklopedisi. It's by novelist and historian Reşad Ekrem Koçu and the related archive, the archive of the Encyclopedia. The encyclopedia itself is an unconventional resource of information. It delves on people, traditions, the underground life of Istanbul, and many other less discussed social issues and social fabric about the city. It was published between the 1940s and 1970s. It only covers the topics from the letter A to letter G, so it's incomplete. And the archive, now acquired by the Kadir Has University, in its diversity, suggests both additional information on the city, as well as the author, and also the making of this grand publication. However, that's also incomplete, and it's far from filling the void until the letter Z, but it's a different compendium to understand better the whole story. SALT and Kadir Has University have been cataloging and digitizing both of the assets. So now we have completed the processing of 3 million words from the 10,000 published entries from the encyclopedia, as well as the 35,000 archival documents. So the work will be complete when these different data sets are made available online in conversation with each other. And this project, the New Approaches to Data, actually stems from the need here to discuss the acts of archiving, designing, and engineering with such a goal in mind. So Digilogue has joined the research in 2019 and initiated private workshops for the research group, as well as public presentations by professionals who could help us in this journey, and Gene is one of them. I think Lalin can fill us in more about how we continue in this, in the new Approaches to Data project together. So I welcome you all in the name of SALT. Thank you.
Thank you, Meriç, and thank you, Gene, for being here with us. As Digilogue, I can say as a transdisciplinary platform that operates in the fields of technology and creative industries, we're very interested in seeing projects that pertain to the preservation of cultural heritage and being able to kind of carry that history and materials into the future. And we've been proudly collaborating with SALT, the leading and only institution dedicated to this archival process within Turkey. We've been contributing to their process of exploring approaches to some of their particular archival projects, which Meriç has mentioned, which is the Istanbul Ansiklopedisi, via inviting a global community of experts in the field of information design, machine learning, and new digital tools to assist in determining possible new paths or vision of what we call new data narratives. And you can find the previous lecture on machine learning and design by Channel Studio, which is on our YouTube channels. And then just to kind of give you a little information, on 17th of June, we'll be having the second of our public talks, which will be by Clever Franca. And here we have to introduce Gene Kogan. He's an artist and a programmer that works with autonomous systems, collective intelligence, generative art, and computer science. He has been interested in scientific literacy, creativity, and play, and builds educational spaces and creates that all of his work is free and open source and that it's accessible to everyone, which is also very important for us to have been working with him over these years for all of the knowledge that he's been kind of putting into our community, into betterment of the skills. He's been leading projects of machine learning for art. He's an advisor for Runway ML, which is a machine learning tool. Has been teaching at NYU And he's been organizing Brahman, an experiment in low cost and high tech living in the Californian desert, which I urge everybody to kind of check it out, because this is one of the most fun and educational organizations that I've stumbled upon. Thank you so much to SALT again for bringing all of us in this project. And Gene, now it's your turn. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, thanks for the introduction, Aline. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, thanks for anyone who's tuning in to join us. Thanks for listening. So I'll just, well, the idea for this talk is I'll tell you a little bit about my work with machine learning. I'll talk about a new project that is hopefully will have some implications for how we use data in machine learning processes. And yeah, I just kind of dive in, and I'll start talking about some of the work that I do. So first off, most people know me for my workshops. I've been doing these machine learning for artists workshops for the last good 5 years now or so. They used to look like this. So back when the world was a little normal, we would have a lot of in-person workshops where we allow people to learn the tools, set them up for themselves, and you know, kind of learn how to use machine learning in a sort of creative way. I've been compiling a resource. Actually, this link is out of date now. It should say ml4a.net, but ML4a stands for Machine Learning for Artists, and it's this collection of resources, educational materials, workshop materials, exercises, and code for this topic. And I've been compiling it for a couple of years, and all of the stuff that I talk about is kind of largely there. Some of the things that you'll see in there are demos, guides, and classes. I've been recording some of my lectures on the topic for a few years, and so these are actually some of the older ones, but you can see that I've been putting class notes on there every year or so on mostly on this topic of ML4A, and you'll see that all in on that website. So I'll tell you just really quickly about my background. So I got interested in machine learning kind of in a very random, accidental way. When I was in college, I was interested in studying recommender systems, which is, as a big music collector, I was really interested in music. And at that time, there were just beginning to be websites like Pandora and Last.fm, which would recommend music to you based on whatever other music that you were listening to. And I was interested in this problem academically. And I learned that people were studying machine learning in order to try to make it better. And so that's how I became interested in machine learning. It was still pretty small, just kind of a small field at the time relative to what it is today. And at that time, doing music and machine learning meant almost completely different tools than they are now, as well as mostly tools that didn't work. So it's been really interesting to watch this field advance so fast in the last 10 years. I have an appreciation for just how fast it's advanced, because I've gotten sort of a front row seat to see from a user perspective, like as an engineer or as a developer. I've been just, amazed to see the tools become more and more just stronger as we go. And that's kind of kept my interest in it for as long as I've been in it. Well, this kind of led me to study machine learning more generally. So getting closer to the last few years, there's been a lot of interest in this subfield of machine learning that we call deep learning. And deep learning kind of has been, for the last few years, soaking up most of the enthusiasm and excitement about machine learning. It's the most powerful techniques that we know of right now for doing most of the interesting and impressive things we do with machine learning. It's all based on deep neural networks, multiple layer neural networks, which form representations of images and sounds and text, and then learn how to do really interesting and crazy things with them. So one of my first big interests in deep learning came out of research that's been going on for the last 10 to 12 years in how to visualize neural networks and visualize their features and what they're learning. And basically, this kind of came out of questions that emerged 10 years ago or so as deep learning began to become more popular. One of the questions that many in the research community had, as well as just everyday users of neural networks, was what are neural networks actually learning? What do they see inside? Because machine learning can seem, even to a scientist, like a black box. There's some program that's inside of that you can't really have much visibility into, and you don't really know what it's learning or how it's making the decisions that it makes. And so one of the strands of research that emerged from this question was, how can we improve our visualization of deep neural networks? And the way that people began to try to do that maybe 10 years ago was to try to either visualize images. So, they would ask a question like, this neural network has all of these neurons. I want to know what this specific neuron is looking for. What does it activate for? What images excite this particular neuron? What you can do is this research by Karen Simonian and collaborators about 2009, I think, showed is that you can try to optimize the pixels of an image so as to maximally excite some neuron. So there's some neuron in the neural network that is looking for bell peppers, bell peppers or foxes or keyboards or lemons or whatever, or faces or cats. And what we can do is we can figure that out by trying to run an optimization algorithm, which will change the pixels of the image ever so slightly, many times, until the neuron that we're trying to excite is excited. And then we get to see these kind of almost like templates for what kinds of things this neuron likes. And so faces, cats, and so on. This is 2009 or so. So it doesn't look that interesting. It's not very beautiful. And it wasn't an art application at all. It was a research question, just visualization. But a few years later, this kind of began to change as people began to experiment more with this technique and even add features to it that weren't necessarily trying to answer the original research questions, but were really just kind of trying to make compelling art. In particular, these three researchers at Google, Alex Morgensev, Mike Kaika, and Chris Olah, wrote a blog post at Google about almost 6 years ago now, where they showed how to take this technique and kind of take it to the next level. They made some technical modifications to it that allowed you to have much more vivid colors and sort of a lot more obvious subjects, and released software for it as well. So they released open source software for this. They released a neural network called Inceptionism that was kind of used in this process. And so I was really fascinated by this. A lot of us that were interested in machine learning at the time were very fascinated by this. And they even introduced a technique that was completely and totally art focused, didn't really have any serious research implications, and that was Deep Dream. And Deep Dream was this, or is this, technique for where basically instead of trying to maximally activate a particular neuron of interest, Deep Dream is this process very closely related, which changes the pixels of an image, optimizes the pixels of an image so as to maximally activate all of the neurons to the extent that they're activated already. So to amplify or enhance the activities, the things that the neural network thinks it sees. So in other words, it's trying to make the neural network hallucinate. So to try to imagine an image, which would, so to take the image that it's seeing and whatever features that the neural network thinks it sees, make more of them. So it's a little bit like the sort of hallucination idea or the dreaming idea. And Alex was the inventor of this technique, and he started making lots of art with it that looked like this, you know, just like really crazy looking neural art. And some of the first, I think, that I saw in this genre that we've now had lots of. Mike also introduced a bunch of techniques that I began to use later. And for my part, I've been interested in developing this technique a little further as well. One of the things that I became interested in working with this software was how to get back more control for an artist to compose with. So because one of the things about Deep Dream is that it really takes over the whole process. It does, you know, most of it sort of did all of the heavy lifting. And as an artist, I'm, you know, interested in having more control, or maybe even as just a graphic designer, I'm interested in having sort of tools and levers to control the image. And so one of the ways that I started trying to do that was to use masks as ways of sort of allocating different parts of the image to different optimizations. So here, there's a mask that goes from left to right, which takes there's basically two neurons that are trying to be optimized, one all the way on the left side of the canvas and one all the way on the right side. And then the masks allow me to kind of blend one into the other. And so in the middle, where the mask is 50% each of the two objectives, you see features of both of the optimizations kind of appearing. And so you can compose with masks in all sorts of ways. You can form circles with them. These are concentric circles. On the outside, you have this kind of flower looking thing. In the middle, you have sort of butterflies. I can't really necessarily describe, but something like that. You can also use this technique to make video. So here, the idea is to make video feedback loops. So because the technique it always starts with an input image. And so here I can use it in this kind of feedback loop where I'll make one image and then modify it slightly, maybe distort it or rotate it or zoom in on it, and then run it again and do this over and over to generate video. And so this is kind of something that occupied me for a couple of years. I made lots of images and sounds like this, still am to some degree. And I also kind of figured out a few years ago how to make loops out of them. So these are actually 3-second long loops. And so this is using some probably my happiest trick that I figured out in this technique. So I've been using this loop idea for a little while as well. I became interested in other techniques for generating imagery with neural networks like style transfer, texture synthesis, and lots of things like that. And this is what's called texture synthesis or style transfer, where I'm generating a texture that looks like a particular source image. So the source image in this case is the famous Japanese woodblock, the Great Wave of Kanagawa. And this is actually just generating an endless texture in this style. And like the previous slide, these are perfect loops. This video just keeps on looping. Same for this. It's the same idea, except it's the source is Kandinsky. So the artist Vasily Kandinsky. The technique is incredibly versatile. So it really, it sort of works on almost anything that you give it, like Google Maps, for example. So you can give it lots of different kinds of things. Maps is one thing. The first slide that I had was a chalkboard. And this right here is these are loops, sort of Deep Dream loops. Same principle, but here this is using Deep Dream again instead of style transfer. And again, these are just looping. More of these Deep Dream loops. You can use real images to make masks. so as to isolate the different, parts of the, so as to make regions for each of your kind of, textures. So here, on the left, it's the Mona Lisa, and on the right, this is actually Jan LeCun, who is who's one of the sort of preeminent names in deep learning. More stuff, just generating textures using style transfer. These are almost like collages or paintings by famous painters that were not actually made by those painters. So this is a Jackson Pollock collage. This is a Frida Kahlo collage. You can see her noses and her eyes, the eyebrows and stuff like that. Salvador Dali, his melting clocks. Georgia O'Keeffe, the painter who painted lots of still lifes and flowers. And this technique this technique is kind of broadly called style transfer. So this is the act of taking one image and regenerating it in the style of another. So this is sort of Starry Night, Hokusai, and Google Maps style. And one of the more fun things I've done with deep learning in the last 2 years is I've developed a style transfer installation, like a mirror that basically you get in front of, and it will restyle you in a particular style. So I think I have a video on this. Let's see here. Yeah. So this is just the installation at work in Toronto, I think. And these are basically kids that are just, having fun, more or less, in front of the mirror, seeing themselves be restyled in real time. And at this point, I've been doing this for five or 6 years, and so the technology is pretty old now. But for many people, still see it for the first time. So even when I install it in new places 5, 6 years later, it's still mostly a novelty for people. And so that's kind of one of the interesting things about deep learning, is that even though to some people, to me, it's a lot of it is old news, it's still not dispersed all over the world. It's still kind of this emerging thing, not well distributed, but that's becoming much more present in most of the places that we go. I've also been really fascinated for a long time by generative models, and generative models are basically these are neural networks that produce images themselves. So they can produce entire objects, concrete objects, cars, cats, TV screens, and so on. Generative models are of immense importance to machine learning applications, many of which use generative models. Generative models are called generative models because they're generative, they generate. And in particular, generative models like generative adversarial networks, GANs, have been really sort of, for the last few years, have gotten most of the attention. More recently, it's been things like transformers and some other more exotic architectures. But there's been just lots of work on this subject. I'll just kind of describe generative models. They're neural networks that they kind of have a common interface, let's say, to people, which is they take lots of data, they learn how to make new samples of what looks like that it came from that data, and they're usually controllable with some, what we call like a latent input code. And that's just a vector of numbers which activates the network, sort of stimulates it, makes it produce an image. So the two biggest architectures for this over the last few years have been generative adversarial networks, GANs, and autoencoders. I won't talk about the technicals of this so much, but more recently, there's been most of the really exciting ones are now transformers, and I'm going to talk about that near the end of the slides. This stuff goes back to 2015 or so. So DCGAN was the first generative adversarial network that produced images. At the time that we saw this, 2015, these were state-of-the-art images of faces. So just about 5.5 years ago, these were all state-of-the-art images with of faces, and that they showed that you could do arithmetic to edit add and subtract different features like glasses, you could do that with these latent input codes. And so at the time, this was extremely new. And now the state of the art has changed dramatically, which we'll see in a couple slides. One of my first project with GANs was this project called A Book from the Sky. It was late 2015. It was, I think, the first artwork to make use of GANs, depending on what you consider one. GANs became extremely popular a few years later, like 2018. They started to show up in a lot of sort of like, art galleries and museums and so on. In this project at the time, GANs were really small. You could just do sort of 32 pixel GANs. So I trained them on basically handwritten Chinese characters. I did this project called A Book from the Sky, which you can read about here. And these are basically synthesizing handwritten Chinese characters. Learn, child, is, have. These are not great translations, but roughly accurate. You could do interpolations between different characters. So yeah, this was kind of my first project, probably still my most gratifying kind of generative adversarial project. And I don't know, for anyone who happens to study Chinese, Chinese characters have these root characters called radicals, which all of the characters of a particular radical evolve from. And one of the cool things in this project is that these interpolations would preserve the radical in the animations. And so I thought that was kind of cool. GANs have become almost photorealistic in the last 2 years. Even by 2018, it was generating faces that looked basically indistinguishable from reality. At least as far as faces, they seem to be almost a solved problem. They just generate images that are incredibly realistic. These are all synthetic images made with GANs. These are dogs and bubbles and mushrooms and rockets and gardens and all sorts of things. Approaching a level of detail and realism that people, including myself, thought impossible for a long time. I trained a style GAN. Style GAN is one of the more popular GAN architectures in the art world. I trained one on paintings. This is like a style GAN trained on wiki art paintings in 2017 or 2018 maybe. You can see that it's able to generate a huge diversity of painting styles. So portraits, landscapes, architecture drawings, abstract works, ink, charcoal, pencil drawings, all the things basically. So a lot of diversity, really sort of interesting road. And then Big GAN is kind of another architecture that's been pretty popular. It's you can see it makes extremely realistic looking images and of burgers and mountains and dogs and things like that. This is completely fake. So this dog is not real. So just think about that. So you could do a lot of really funny things. I do a lot of educational work, and one of the things I like to do is to try to get people to experience these tools through humorous or playful means. And so, for example, this is taking Big GAN, different objects that you can produce with Big GAN, like owls and dogs, and then mixing them, because you can do this addition and subtraction on these latent input codes in that characterize GANs, and then you can mix them together. So here, this is sort of an owl plus a dog into this kind of alien-looking animal. Same thing, owl plus a dog. It looks a little bit like a Harry Potter character, I often say. Owl plus cat. I did a lot of owls because, the owls are just quite good in Big GAN. This is an owl, another dog, looks like a mop. Owls mixed with random things like thrones. This is a dog plus a sea lion. So you get this kind of like a hybrid creature that's somewhere between dog and sea lion. And then this is my favorite, it's train, and the tram. So if you take a tram and you combine it with a whale, you'll get this, which looks kind of like a ferry. So yeah, I kind of thought that was pretty funny. A sea creature plus a tram is a ferry. And then this is basically an idea I had to try to regenerate a whole movie in the style of another video. So this is a video on the left side from Planet Earth, the BBC documentary on animals. And basically one neural network is telling me what is in every single image, and then sends that to a generative model, which regenerates that image from the kind of the activity from the first neural network. Let's just see how we're doing. 8:30. We're doing pretty good. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about Pix2Pix and sort of, these are generative models that work on input images that have some kind of a like an image to image translation models, which will convert things like maps into satellite images, or these kind of labeled maps into facades. These are black and white photos being turned into color, edges being turned into photographs, daytime photos being turned into nighttime photos, things like that. And I've been working with this technique as well for a while. This is my first project in it, called Invisible Cities from 2016. And this was basically regenerating satellite imagery from map tiles. So take map tiles and synthesize satellite images, and then even do things like do style transfer for city maps. So this is kind of Milan. This is an overhead view of Milan, an actual photograph. And then in the middle, this is Milan as though it turned into the style of Los Angeles, and Milan turned into Venice, where all the roads have become canals and things like that. This image stuff has really come a long way. So this is work from NVIDIA, showing it being done on video, generating bodies, generating all sorts of things. And a little more recently, I created I make a lot of installations too. This is one of my many jobs that I've had over the years. I make interactive installations, and the most recent one is using this technology. So what you're seeing is an installation where on the left side, you basically are finger painting different colors, which correspond to grass and mountains and trees and water and clouds and things like that. And then on the right side, it's generating what looks like a photograph of your finger painting. And so you can kind of see what's going on. This is an installation that I made for a museum called the Futurium, which is in central Berlin, Germany. So if anybody ever makes their way to Berlin, you can go see this installation, assuming that it's open right now. And this is actually one of 3 installations I have at Futurium. The other one, very similar, is letting you, it's kind of like Invisible Cities. It lets you compose with these plastic pieces on a little table, as this kid is doing. The blue ones represent water, the green ones represent parks and grass, trees and things like that, and then the red ones are buildings. And so as the kid kind of moves them around, it generates a map, sort of satellite imagery that looks like it came from Google Maps. Yeah. And my last interactive installation, which I like to show, is this work that I made with a collaborator named Andreas Strefsgaard called Doodle Tunes. And what's going on in Doodle Tunes is, let's see if I can get the audio going, share sound, is that as you draw pictures of musical instruments under a camera, the camera recognizes what instruments you draw and then begins to make music with those instruments. So I hope you can hear this audio. Just leave this on. Andreas draws a keyboard. Next, and it begins to instruments that you draw. So more drums, more a saxophone. He's drawing some bass guitar. Yeah, you get the idea. Another thing that I did with this technique was I used it to make sort of deep fakes, as we call them now. So at the time there was no deep fakes, but we were using pix to generate basically the face swapping. And so in 2016, this is kind of my crummy version of it. And later I got it to be a little better. This is basically kind of, so sometimes I like to joke that my job as an artist is to warn people about the future. And I kind of think that this project is in service of that, because it was still a little while before we started doing things like deep fakes. And as deep fakes became more and more prominent in as people begin to fear a little bit these deep fakes, I like to think that maybe I clued a few people into it when the tools were still kind of not super good like this. So these are more realistic results that are synthesized by NVIDIA, and they show that we can basically copy faces at this point pretty easily. So yeah, it's something to be aware of. Let's skip this slide. I like to also have a lot of fun sometimes with generative models that you do stuff on faces. Often faces are sort of the easiest way to explain different aspects of generative machine learning to people. And usually, since I'll use my own face because I don't want to embarrass anybody else. But this is some work where basically using what are called reversible generative models, where you can take a real image, like this is on the left side, this is a photograph of me, and then encode them into the neural network so that the neural network generates that exact same image. And then you can use the neural network to make edits as normal to the features of the neural network. You can, change my hair to blonde, give me glasses, give me heavy makeup and things like that. You can, as you can see, just having fun, turning myself old and bald, things like that. Or even doing these interpolations between my face and other people's faces. I don't know if you recognize the young Canadian pop star that I'm being converted into. Or, in this case, I'm being converted into various sort of heads of state. Just kind of having fun. Another fun thing is, I don't know if anyone ever got a chance to play with FaceApp. FaceApp is this, it's this iPhone application that lets you put a smile on a face. So it takes this photo and put a fake smile in it. So that's not actually my mouth. And I thought it would be funny if I used this app by running the smile filter over and over and over and over until on the same image until it couldn't find a face anymore. And so that's what this looks like. If anyone ever, I'll save you the effort if anyone wanted to ever see how that works. I'm a little out of order here, but I'll mention a few more things. This is kind of more closely related to the style transfer element that I was discussing before. And this is, so basically superimposing one image into another. So like this photo of Einstein into the Crab Nebula. I started kind of making jokes, like putting myself into famous paintings, into scenes like this. So this is again just liking to make jokes with things, things like that. Let me show you some text to image stuff. I actually don't really have slides for this. This is much more recent, but I'm going to show you from just my fold finder. So recently, one of the big things that we've gotten is the ability to do generative models from images. This kind of started, a few years ago with models like Attention GAN and even before that, StatGAN. But more recently, this became kind of a big deal when OpenAI released some blog posts that showed them advancing the state of the art from this. So they released two models, or partially two models, called Clip and Dolly, which would basically generate images from text. So the idea is that you get this text prompt, like an illustration, an illustration of a baby daikon radish in a tutu walking a dog. And this is what they demonstrated. They show pictures of what looks like a radish with a tutu walking a dog. And it's an illustration. And this is an armchair in the shape of an avocado. So these are all completely synthetic images generated by this model, Dolly, that OpenAI created. And the results are unbelievably accurate. And that, you know, for me, this was just completely mind-blowing. And I this is the most recent thing in my presentation, and I really urge everybody to be aware of this, because it's groundbreaking. It's really like the beginning of text to image as a interface, as a way of interfacing with computers. So you know, they demonstrated a pentagonal green clock in the shape of a pentagon. Now, what they an emoji of a baby penguin wearing a blue hat, red gloves, green shirt, and yellow pants. So you can do the stuff where you change this to, okay, I'll do a hedgehog with a yellow hat, green gloves, blue shirt, and, you know, red pants. So they didn't make a demo. They just put in a bunch of example images, but it's really incredibly realistic and diverse, and, you know, really so yeah, I'm sort of not even sure how to really articulate just how impressive this work is, having tried and failed many times to do text to image. And so now, more recently, they've been sitting on this technology. They haven't released it very much. They've released little bits of it, and that's inspired a lot of you know, like armchair machine learning researchers like myself and others to work with the tools to try to kind of reverse engineer a little bit how OpenAI did this. In particular, we're using this network that they released called CLIP, which stands for Contrastive Learning. I forgot what IP stands for, but CLIP is this. I don't have time to get into the technicals very much, but it's basically a neural network that is able to kind of give you the strength of the connection between a piece of text and an image. And so that can be used in tandem with other neural networks, generative models, for example, to optimize what those models create, so as to optimize for a particular you know, sentence, let's say. And I've been working a lot with this young researcher named Adverb, or Advednoun on Twitter, and who's really kind of been doing the most innovative work with this. He's made a few of these notebooks. The most recent one's called Latent Visions. These are like just kind of tutorials on how to use Clip to generate images. To kind of use Clip to generate really interesting looking images, and he's released some of his software. I'm going to show you some of the things that I've made with it. So, so for example, you can. So this is just a group of random photos, basically. So this is a banana performing stand-up comedy, right? A group of dogs playing poker, a banquet hall. Right. Oh, actually, this is not the right ones. I'd like to put on these instead. So this is, yeah, a banana performing comedy, a banquet hall. I'll try to make this a little bigger. Blue fire. Let's see, this is a cart full of flowers. A cityscape made out of flowers. A dinosaur in the rainforest. A group of dogs playing poker. This is made by my girlfriend. A man made of geometric patterns. This one actually came out really well. I think it was the first one she tried, and it was much better than all the ones that I produced. A mushroom crossing the street, a penguin reading a book, penguin riding a unicorn. So you get the idea. It's just making these really wild images that look kind of realistic. So I even could make new MC Eschers. So this is a drawing, an illustration in the style of MC Escher. I'm going to show you a video like this in a second. This is Donald Trump in a tutu. Electric unicycle. I'm a big fan of the electric unicycle. Lately, I've been making videos with this technique as well. So I kind of started trying to animate it using a sort of feedback process similar to what I showed earlier with the style transfer ones. And this is kind of my first results. This very short video trying to animate it. It's very hard to control the between frames, there's a lot of variance. And so it's a little bit difficult to control. Probably the best work I've done with this so far has been this sort of drawing in the style of MC Escher. So I think this is this one right here. So this is looping. So this is a 5-second long video that's looping, and it's basically making an endless drawing in the style of MC Escher. And so it just goes on and on like this. And let's see, I can show you a few more things. The sun rises over the mountains. It's a little noisy. I think this one's a little better. The sun rises over the mountains. Let's see here, rainbows over the, let's see, stars and planets. And you can make all sorts of really weird sort of like abstracts. These are some abstract works. And all of that comes from text, which is kind of the most wild part of it. And also you can kind of use this stuff to do stuff like, for example, so let's see. So here, I'll take my face and then I say to clip, generate an image in the cubist style. And so you can combine that. You can do a sort of like text-based style transfer. So I showed you style transfer earlier, and style transfer was like I take one image and a second image, and I restyle the first image with the second image. But here, this is the same thing, except instead of using an image as the style, you describe it. You just go, make a cubist painting of myself, right? Cubist painting. Or here, this is make a clown face, clown makeup, because and lately just kind of trying to bag on Elon Musk a little bit, but this is Elon Musk as a clown and using entirely from text. So this is kind of like one of the things that's been really interesting me for a little while. Actually, you can see the generation of this in video. Let's see how that looks. And again, you can do this on not just faces, but pictures of mountains. So this is on the right side. You see an image of mountains, and then this is mountains in impressionist style. This is on the left side is the mountains in ukiyo-e style. So this is Japanese kind of painting style. And so you can do this kind of text-based style transfer. And so what you're going to see, I think, in the future is that increasingly applications like Adobe Photoshop and Photoshop-like applications, basically user interfaces on computers are going to be increasingly using text as the mode of interface. So you'll be controlling your computer in the future by speaking to it, by writing to it, by language, basically using language to communicate with computers. And so that's kind of like something in the future. To give you a concrete example of that is this. So this is the mountains, and then the mountains at night. So you'll have a picture of mountains, and you'll be a graphic designer, and you'll say, okay, I want to see, what do I want to do to these mountains? I'd like to see them at night. So hey, Photoshop, generate the image at night, and then it'll just make this. And so there won't be any editing the colors in the sky and making filters and all of this kind of stuff. It'll just be like you talk to your computer and it generates things that you need. So that's all stuff that's in the pipeline, coming in the future, stuff to really look out for. Okay, so yeah, okay, and that leads me to the last thing. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about is this project called Abraham. And I just want to make sure, so I have about 10 minutes. So Abraham is a project that I actually started thinking about 4 years ago. I proposed it for the first time 2 years ago. I worked on it for a little while, and then I put it down about a year ago. And now I'm beginning to plan to return to this project. So this is a project that I've been really obsessed with for 4, going on 5 years now. It's a really ambitious and complicated project, and so I've had multiple times where I've kind of stopped working on it, thinking that it's impossible. But lately I've been feeling pretty confident about it. So we'll see how far we can get this time around. But I wanted to introduce it because it's a really it's a really interesting project that combines a lot of things that I'm interested in. And so I'm going to describe it right now. The website is abraham.ai. It hasn't been updated in a little while, but I'm going to explain what this is. So the idea of Abraham is the name of an artist that I'd like to build. And the artist is an AI. It's an artificial agent, an autonomous artificial artist, as I call it. So it's an agent, a computational agent that makes art. And that art is unique and it's original. It has its own distinct style. And the artist, Abraham, generates this art autonomously, independently. And so I'm going to define what I mean by those things. I'll just mention quickly that a lot of this stuff, it has a long legacy. So this goes back many decades even. Lately, we've had this, in the last few years, there's been this kind of AI arts movement, and not my word, not my name, but it's been called AI arts for lack of a better term. And AI arts actually goes back a few decades, maybe to the first people using computers to generate, to make generative artworks. And the dream of people working with AI is exactly what I described, to make, synthetic, almost like artificial life forms that make their own art. And so this has been an obsession for a long time for a lot of people, myself included. And in particular, projects like Aaron, the sort of Harold Cohen's project is one of the more famous ones, where he tried to make a robot that would make drawings in his style. And so Abraham is actually partially an homage to Aaron. So the thing about all of these AI artist ideas is that, in my opinion, they have always been incomplete. And the thing that they were missing was this idea of autonomy, originality, and uniqueness. So to me, an artist is not only an artist must get, if it's an AI, if it's truly an artificial life form, it has to demonstrate independence. It has to act on its own accord. And most AIs are not like this, or all AIs are not like this, because, in my opinion, because they require humans to operate them. So they require sort of humans to make them go, to give them permission to, act. And so they're missing this element of autonomy, in my opinion. And so so the art DAO idea, which emerged kind of in 2016, 2017, in my opinion, kind of completed this idea. And this is an idea that came from the crypto space, from the original sort of proponents of platforms like Ethereum. So a few people who were very active in the world of Ethereum in the early days, they were writing about things like decentralized autonomous organizations. And this is the whole DAO thing has become a huge buzzword in the last couple of months. People are now talking about DAOs, but DAOs have been, people have been writing about them for a couple of years now. And the idea that really got me interested in DAOs was this art DAO idea. And the idea of the art DAO is you have this entity which is decentralized, and it works on the blockchain, and it's using cryptography. And so it's basically a running off of a contract. And so it's autonomous in this sense. And the idea of the art DAO, DAOs can do lots of things. DAOs can kind of be used for governing organizations, or they can refer to, agents that live online, that have their own wallet, that have their own computers, computational resources, and so on, and are otherwise autonomous. And one particular kind of DAO would be one that generates art, and then basically lives as an artist. It kind of has a professional life as an artist. It sells art on online platforms, making editions of it, putting it on decentralized marketplaces like Open Bazaar, and using the earnings to pay for its own computation. And so this was kind of an idea, a fairly basic idea that they had a couple of years ago, building on DAOs. And in particular, I'm citing the writings of two people here in the space, Trent McConaughey and Simon de la Rouviere, who wrote about the art DAOs, from whom I learned about this idea in the crypto space. And so, sorry. Yeah, there we go. So the thing to me that the art DAO, like I said, the thing that the art DAO really does for me is that it allows us a mechanism to have the DAO have its own voice, to kind of speak independently of the artist or group of artists or programmers who developed it. So to me, like an AI art program that is written by a programmer like myself, or or Harold Cohen, or any AI artist, is that really the art program is kind of a tool. It's a tool that the artist made to express themselves. I think that's kind of the best way of looking at existing AI arts. But then the question I have is, can the DAO have its own voice? And so I can make this analogy between a dummy and a ventriloquist. So when so you guys know the whole trick with the ventriloquist. They have a dummy on their hand, and they make the dummy speak, and they don't move their mouth. And so it looks like the dummy is speaking, right? But everyone knows that it's really the ventriloquist who's making the dummy speak. And that, to me, it describes the limitation of an AI artist that isn't also autonomous in its computation. And basically, the idea of the art DAO is to try to give the program, the dummy, its own soul. I would say is really kind of the best way of putting it. So my idea is to use machine learning for this, as most of my ideas usually start. And the more specifically, I would like to, before I get into the machine learning, the idea is to generate an AI program. Oh, I guess I'm running out of time, so I'm gonna finish this up in 2 minutes, and then I think that's okay, right? I'll just keep going until someone stops me. But basically, the idea is to crowdsource a generative art program, which is whose output is the collective, creativity of many people, crowdsourced, basically. And I make this comparison to nature, that in nature, we have all of these elements of collective intelligence, kind of this idea that of superorganisms, for example, which is like many bees come together and they have what we call, in English, we have this concept of the hive mind. And the idea is that there's some credibility to this idea that a hive has its own mind, that it kind of like can act independently of each of the units of this. And so yeah, so I'm running out of time, so I don't really have a ton of time to do this, but the dream is basically to use technologies, including federated learning. I'm going to skip the technical details because I just don't have a ton of time, but using some of these tools from decentralizing machine learning decentralizing machine learning so as to make a network of people who collectively control a neural network model. And I'm gonna skip some of this stuff because it's so ultimately this is kind of the dream, is to take a generative model, a generative neural network, and to split it into sections, kind of these shards, and then split them into a computer network of many people who do not necessarily collaborate with each other, and then make it so that only this network can operate this neural network. So only this network can generate these images, and the network must train the model together. They must all, cooperate to give the model what it needs: computation, data, and money. So basically, what happens is that the character that the model takes on should reflect the total character of all of the participants in the network. And so, unfortunately, I just don't have time to really get into this. It's a really ambitious project, both technically and philosophically. It covers 4 fields, I think, in my opinion: computer art, philosophy of mind. I would maybe just say like blockchain here, crypto economics, and artificial intelligence. And it's a project I'm pretty obsessed with, and I'm beginning to research again, literally this week. And it's just something that I'm hoping to kind of begin to put out there in the meanwhile. And so these are kind of some of the building blocks that involves things like crypto elements like curation markets and token games, privacy preserving and encrypted machine learning to preserve its autonomy, generative models, of course, and basically other elements of decentralization are all things that are part of this project. So I'm gonna skip this, and that's all. Yeah, I just think I just ran a little bit long, but that's the rest of my talk. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for listening. And if anyone has any questions, I'll begin to take them now.
Hello, Gene.
Hi.
Oh, can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Thank you for this presentation. I feel like the last 2 parts with Brahman and Dali were really exciting. I'm personally very excited to more about them. We have a question that I'd like to direct to you. And one of them is, one second, let's go up. Is the model of the classification regression trained in real time in the installation works?
Which one? Which model?
Well, that was the entire question, so it kind of like did confuse me pertaining to what he was talking about. What in this interesting statement that a system requires some human input and that could be avoided, wouldn't it still require some data to process in order to create the outputs?
Is the question in reference to Abraham or something else?
We can't see that.
Okay.
The submissions are kind of just on.
Oh, I see. Can you reread the question really quick?
In this interesting statement that a system requires some human input and that could be avoided, wouldn't it still require some data to process in order to create the outputs?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So it's probably in reference to Abraham. So I think basically the question is asking, is it really independent if it requires human data? So my answer to that is my notion of independence is sort of independence from any individual human, that it is so that Abraham kind of learns all of Abraham's creativity from all people or a large group of people in a decentralized way. And then I would compare it kind of to a humans, no individual other human kind of controls them. That's kind of, I think, this connection between decentralization and independence or autonomy.
Yeah, meaning that the decision maker there is almost the collective hive mind, as you were referring to, rather than, you know, and you as, for example, the programmer that's kind of determining what it's going to be learning from.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. So especially me as the developer, but really any group of people that are part of the network. It should be sort of all the people that are part of the network, and it gets its character from them.
Okay, thank you. Another question is, it's a very broad question, but I think it's quite humorous. Is there anything that cannot be created on the computer?
Well, I guess that depends on, so I mean, I feel like that's a very philosophical question. Yeah. And I think it depends a lot on what you mean by computer and what you mean by create. So, you know, the laws of conservation tell us that nothing can be created. So, you know, sort of matter and energy already exist, and you can just convert them into each other. And so from there, like, what does it mean to create? It's a little bit tricky. You know, creativity is a more loaded idea than we give credit for. Yeah. And yeah, so it's a really broad question. Probably yes, there are not things that the computer can create.
Yeah, I liked your answer. And one more question. I think this is very relevant. I mean, sorry, it's related to kind of machine learning and AI in general. And he has stated that it's not relevant to the topic, but he's asking, can emotions and behaviors be created as in living things? Example, hatred, instinct for life.
Can computers create artificial things? Can you repeat that again one more time?
Yeah, I mean, he's basically asking, can computers create emotions and behavior?
Oh, I see. Can emotions and behaviors be created?
Is hatred. I mean, I guess it's also a bit of a, you know, what is the conditionality of hatred? But yeah, right. On to you.
Well, you know, I think art can inspire emotions, can create emotions. It's almost the point of art in a sense. And so, yeah, I think, you know, emotions, certainly hatred, instinct for life, but also love and, you know, sort of wonder and all those things. I think they can be created, you know, or, you know, let's say emoted from, you know, you can get those emotions from people, from art. So I'd say yes.
Yeah, that's nice. It's kind of thinking about like it requires a person to kind of experience the output in a sense, and hence that's happening. Yes. Also, I guess in relation to the capacity of the experiences, but it would happen. One more question, just because I think people would be interested, and I was personally interested. How can people have access to DALL-E, which are not necessarily very experienced in coding? How can they begin to kind of experiment with this text to visualization format?
So right now there isn't any really easy way for people who don't code to work with DALL-E, just because the tools are super new, just, you know, 1-2 months old, but people are working on tools to make them. So if you do have some coding experience, you'll see that lots of people are working mostly with CLIP, C-L-I-P. And in particular, like I would check out just the Twitter stream of this guy, Adverb. he's been sharing a lot of his code and notes. These are some other people's. I don't know if they necessarily share code, but basically there's people kind of sharing code right now. And then very soon, though, the first way maybe to interact with these things without coding will be through Abraham. So I'm actually making a demo right now so yet because I don't have it working. But in the future, you'll be able to basically generate images from the command line here. So if you follow me, I'll be announcing that soon. I'm just working on it. Sorry?
I was asking how far in the future, because I think we're all excited to kind of try that.
It sort of depends on how we roll this out. It could be weeks. I'm hoping in some weeks. Okay. But maybe you'll start to see this in things like Runway at some point. But right now, I don't know of any way of doing it without code. Just kind of super new stuff. Someone else will also is going to make an interface online. I bet within some weeks or months.
Okay. Thank you so much, Gene, for joining us.
Thanks,
all of
Lillian.
the information you've passed on. Just to kind of remind our viewers, right now we have another public talk that's coming up on June 17th. So see you then. Thank you again. Bye.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye. Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye. Thanks for having me.